Hello, my name is Jill and I have epilepsy. I'm going to talk about being unable to drive because of my epilepsy. There's been several periods in my life when I've been unable to drive, and I've had to be creative. It's been a challenge, but I've managed. The first time I was pregnant with my first child, and with my third child, I had two young preschoolers and I had several seizures. This was quite challenging. I was married at that stage, and so I had help from my husband. The second time I was a single mum and I had 4 children, and this time it was very challenging. I had to rely on other people to get me to shops to do shopping. I used the bus. The children and I rode bikes. Children rode their bikes to school, and the youngest one I walked to school. And that time I was without a licence for about 9 months. The next time I was postmenopausal, so there seems to be some hormonal component to my epilepsy. This time it was really challenging. I needed to change my medication. I was a nurse at Waikato, and still are, and I was doing shift work, so the way I managed it, and it took a while to get my head around it, but also to set it up, was to use the bus. I lived out of town in Te Awamutu, use the bus to get into work. If it linked in with the shift that I was doing, I got rides with friends who were working at Waikato and were doing the same shift, and my husband took me if it was very early in the morning and I was starting at 7 o'clock, or I was doing a night shift from 11 through to 7. It was quite difficult, and yes, I sort of feel it does impact on your life. I've been really fortunate in that there's only been these 3 occasions where I've been unable to drive, and there are many in the community who are unable to drive for their whole life, and I think it really impacts on how they feel about themselves and their lives, because it's difficult to let's say get out of the town that they live in. Perhaps they can use the bus and bike and walk around town, but to be able to go to the beach or to another city, town, can be very difficult, and it can be quite hard to ask other people for help.
It can be quite isolating, can't it?
Yes, it can. Yes, it can. You can't spontaneously get in the car and go and see a friend. You can only see friends that perhaps live close enough to you. And yes, it's quite isolating.
What was the worst time? Do you think that the last time that you were that you lost your license, you found that the hardest?
I think it was because I was doing shift work, and because of the challenges of finding different means of transport, and you don't like to ask other people for help, and yet, you know, they're only too willing to give you a hand, but you feel a bit embarrassed about it. And you know, around Te Awamutu I was fine because I bike and walk, but getting into Hamilton was really quite a challenge, and I was fortunate that there were these two gentlemen, who were doing afternoon shifts only, and who were only too willing to take me into work when they were doing the same shift. That really made a big difference. And the fact that my husband Tom was able to pick me up or drop me, and it was no problem.
When you were alone, Jill, and you had to pick up your groceries from the supermarket, or had to pick the children up, or had an emergency, how did you cope with that? How did you get your groceries, for example?
I had to rely on other people to take me there to pick them up, or to get them. And yes, I used the bus a lot, I really did, and my bike. But you know, if you're doing anything with the children, yes, they can bike a small distance, but they can't a long distance.
Were you ever faced with an emergency that you had to overcome?
No.
So
I guess I was fortunate in that respect.
Well, that's really wonderful, Jill, talking to us about what it was like to be carless. How long were you carless for?
The first time when I was pregnant, it was 9 months. The second time when I had the 4 young children, it was 9 months. And the third time, it was 18 months. I went a whole year with no seizures, and then had a number of seizures. So then, with a change of medication, I then had to go another 9 months. And I might say it was a great moment when I could then drive again, and it was a bit scary too. I was very apprehensive, and particularly apprehensive every time I went past, and I did it every day I worked, went past the spot where I had an accident. I think that last time was really impacted more, and yet I had no children.
You've done remarkably well, and we're so grateful that you're able to talk to us about what it was like to overcome your difficulties having lost your licence. It's one of these things that does impact on people's lives, and it can be very traumatic when people suddenly lose their licence because they develop epilepsy. And it's giving people the encouragement to find creative ways in this challenging time, and to know that they're not alone, that there are other people facing the same difficulties. Thank you very much for your time, Jill, and for sharing your time with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to do that.